Imagine you pay with a smile. But in an increasing digital world, you can't have large parts of the population being on the side. That's problematic.
Welcome to The Big Question, a series from Euronews where we delve into the biggest topics on the business agenda. I'm Angela Barnes, and today I'm joined by the CEO of Mastercard, Michael Miebach. Michael, thank you very much for joining us on The Big Question. We have so much to talk about, including where we are today at your new Cyber Resilience Centre here in Belgium. So firstly, Michael, can you tell us about the centre?
First of all, delighted to be on the show. I love the name, The Big Question. Cybersecurity, which is what the center is all about, is certainly posing a lot of big questions. Our lives are all getting increasingly digital. At the same time, when we open up our social media, we read the paper, or we watch Euronews, we hear about cyber threats and increasing and rising cyber threats. If you put this in context of the last 5 years, so back in 2018 or so, our lives were gradually digitizing. COVID comes and there's a shock to the system. We were all locked up at home, and the usage of digital offerings had to increase because there was just no other way to run your life. And the fraudsters and scammers and hackers get very busy. So these are challenging times. And here in this center, this is where right behind us, there's colleagues from Mastercard, but there will be colleagues from banks and from law enforcement responding to attacks, driving effective answers, and make sure we're all kept safe.
Do you think Europe is prepared? Do you think companies, businesses generally are prepared enough for this potential?
So during this trip to Brussels, I come here often. The topic is very much on the agenda. The awareness is there. The efforts are there, the willingness to collaborate across the private sector and the public sector. But every day, the threats are increasing. So I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, we're ready for this, because we're not. You will not be. But you can always try to stay a step ahead. Work on the assumption something will happen, and how will we react, and how do we minimize the impact, how do we educate, how do we do skill building. A good way to give a firmer answer on how long and how lasting of a step ahead might we create is by creating a cyber workforce across Europe. We have to do a better job to have cybercrime oriented cybersecurity-oriented curriculums, training efforts that are not 4-year degrees, but a little more modular, so we can speed up and we have the cyber workforce that will keep Europe safe.
Michael, what kind of emerging trends have you been seeing?
So we're seeing a whole different spectrum of attacks. There's been news coverage on attacks on critical national infrastructure, energy grid, healthcare systems. We are seeing digital identity thefts. But it comes down to individual fraudulent payment transactions as well. Very much what we're involved with on an everyday basis, where somebody's compromising your card data and using that card data to make a purchase and it's not you. So there's a whole range of threat vectors. Frequency is increasing, the severity is increasing. And it's less so a question of if something will happen, it's more so of a question is when will it happen and how prepared are we to react to it and minimize the impact and squash the attack. And this brings us right back here. The more we work together, the better your answer can be, the better defense can be.
So when it comes to our money online and the evolution of digitalisation, how can we be safer with our money online?
Let's say you wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to fulfill this wish and I'm going to buy this couch, an online company that will have it delivered to your house. So you want this transaction to go through. And the retailer is interested in making sure it's truly you, but we're also interested in ensuring it is actually a real transaction. It's not somebody that's used compromised card data. So there are various aspects of what could go wrong about this transaction. The consumer just wants it to go through. So if you take that kind of a scenario, what do? You can introduce a lot of friction and put a lot of checks in, and then it gets so cumbersome that people who are not comfortable with digital tools are going to be left behind. But in an increasing digital world, you can't have large parts of the population being on the side. The elderly, for them it's going to be harder. the user going to say, oh, this is cool, I don't actually mind, and I'm going to put my data online and so forth. So they're very different habits, and one needs to ensure that it's simple, at the same time very effective. So how do you do that? You use a set of data that runs behind the scenes. For example, let's say you make a transaction on a device, on a phone. You type at a certain speed with a certain pressure. That is data that's linked to your device, that is linked to you. If you just add that along with a password, we can say, well, actually, that looks like Angela because she always types in this way. There's different data points, could be geolocation, could be any kind of additional data. If you as the consumer give consent for this data to be available for security checks and only for security checks, then the friction disappears because this is all in microseconds behind the scene. Your sofa will come, and it is pretty clear it is you because it was checked 3 times over in microseconds.
As global digitalisation, of course, progresses, how is inclusion being ensured so that in other countries, in Africa, for example, so that people are not left behind in, for example, digital online payments?
So the general notion of inclusive growth, I think, is increasingly adopted and appreciated by a lot of companies who are saying, my business cannot thrive if we don't take everybody along. It sounds like a bit of a wishy-washy statement, but it's in fact very simple business logic. You're building long-term markets by pulling everybody into the digital economy and let the digital economy do what it does by producing a whole new set of business models, different ways to interact, different solutions and so forth. If people are not participating in it, we will not unlock that promise. But if the digital skills are not there, how do you do that? You will create a digital divide. They're the people who have the skills, they're the digital haves, and the people who don't have the skills, they're the digital have-nots. That's problematic. So more focus on inclusion, pulling in and creating those skills is important, that we really need to do a better job of that. So there's a set of tools and experiences that we've had. Mastercard, just us as a company ourselves, we pulled in 850 million people into the digital economy since 2015. We have the goal to ramp it to 1 billion. We run the largest STEM education program for women globally. 7 million girls and young women we have put through STEM curriculum. We launched the MADE Alliance Africa, so the commitment is to pull 100 million people on the continent of Africa into the digital economy over the next 10 years. Now that's a big commitment, and we need more of these commitments, and we need partners to do it. But then the promise of the digital economy can be, well, everybody will benefit from that.
30% of companies that have introduced AI has been a victim of cyber attacks.
Right.
So for businesses, what are the cyber attack trends you're seeing for businesses, and what knock-on effect does it have on the economy as well? Right.
So first of all, the cyber crime space is a huge industry in itself. So it's grown in scale, and it's significant undertakings and well-organized groups that do this. The link into AI, particularly generative AI, is going to be having profound impacts on enabling so many businesses to run a better business, to do very different things they weren't able to do before. That's exciting. On the other hand of that, you could have AI manufacture deepfakes and scams that are so hard to recognize that a small company has no chance to identify. My team has gone to lengths to demonstrate this to me as well by creating a deepfake.
Was it convincing?
It was very convincing. It is really good to see that because it raises the sense of urgency because people have seen what is possible. So we better get our act together and collaborate to push back on cybercrime. So there's opportunity, there's risk as in most things in life. And I think what we need to do is take that same technology and make sure we leverage it to minimize the risk. We have about 140 billion transactions running through our network today. So how do we do it? We do it by leveraging artificial intelligence to score these transactions and say, this is a good one and this one should be stopped. If you use generative AI, you can start to look ahead and predict what is likely to go wrong. So rather than saying, okay, I'm going to stop this because this threat has occurred, I'm going to predict this threat will occur, and I'm going to put the defenses up because that's what generative AI can do. You can use all sorts of input, take a view what might go wrong. Very specific example, your car data might have been compromised. Nothing has happened yet. But there's a certain transaction pattern that now looks different than what it has in the past when only you were using it, and we can stop it immediately. You cannot do this for 140 billion transactions without AI. So it has tremendous potential, brings risk, but we use the same technology to keep the ecosystem safe.
Just lastly, we already pay with things with our mobiles, with watches and whatnot, but looking ahead in 10 years' time, what does the future of online payments, or if they're online payments, what does it look like?
Imagine you pay with your smile.
Pay with a smile.
How about that? Biometric technology. So yes, you pay today with your fingerprint or with a password or whatever you do today, but we could replace whatever security really with the person, and it could be a facial imprint, as simple as that. So it sounds like a nice tagline, but we've taken that live in South America. We're now taking into Asia, and it will come to Europe at some point in time. Biometric authentication is the most secure way to do that, and it's easy and it's exciting, and it takes everybody along because anybody can do that.
That would be quite wonderful to pay with a smile. It would force everyone to smile a little bit more as well, wouldn't it?
Right. Yeah, you can also look stern, but either way.
We'll just stick with smile, Michael.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much for your time and for joining us on The Big Question. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Angela.